Welcome in, everyone. Ready to dive deep into 2 Timothy 1 and 7. I bet you think you've heard it all in this one, the whole fear not thing.
Oh, yeah. You pastors, Sunday school teachers, you know this verse by heart.
But we're after something different today, right? Unique interpretations, sermon illustrations that'll stick, ways to make this verse hit home without the usual platitudes.
Exactly. We dug into sermons from all over, different denominations, styles, the whole gamut, to find what's working.
So what surprised you? What stood out from all those takes on 2 Timothy 1:7?
Honestly, Menlo Church's take on legacy, that got me thinking.
Legacy. Okay, tell me more.
They presented faith like a family heirloom passed down over generations, something precious.
I like that, because it's not just on U.S. then, right? We're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And an heirloom, you got to take care of it, polish it, choose to value it.
Makes you think, if we're passing down the faith, what are we giving people? Dusty old rules or
Yeah.
something they'll treasure.
That's the question, isn't it? And it leads right into another theme that kept popping up. Fear's not from God.
Oh yeah, that came up a lot. Restoration Life, Church of the Harvest, River City Calvary Chapel, all hitting that point.
It's such a stumbling block for people, right? Fear stops us from really living our faith, stepping out, taking risks.
All the time. I see it in my congregation, people scared of judgment, scared to fail, holding back.
So how do you as a pastor break through that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, some sermons got real direct. Church of the Harvest, they talked about fear like a spirit, something you can cast out.
Whoa, almost like an exorcism, getting rid of that fear. But then River City Calvary Chapel went a different route. They used that D-Day scene from Saving Private Ryan.
Intense, right. Talk about fear.
But their point was, that's legitimate fear, real danger. Fear of sharing your faith, that's different, almost like pride holding you back.
Oof, convicting.
Then you had Liberty Life Church. Their pastor told this story about facing down a bear while hunting, all about courage.
Two secular stories, but both getting to the heart of the verse. One about accepting fear's reality, the other, conquering it.
So many ways to approach it. And the illustrations. Some were really creative. I was jotting them down thinking, gotta use that.
Yeah, illustrations, they're what make a sermon come alive.
Well, Menlo Church, with their legacy theme, they used an antique hutch, passed down generations, to represent faith.
Smart, right. Takes this abstract idea and makes it something you can picture, something with history.
Totally. Then Limitless Life TV, they had this story about their I Give Help program. Thought it was a failure, but one person's life was changed by it.
That's encouraging, right. You never know what small act of faith will spark something huge.
And then there's that monkey and banana experiment, classic. Restoration Life Church used it to show how fear gets ingrained, even when the danger's gone.
Oh yeah, the monkeys are scared even though there's no reason to be anymore. How much of our fear is like that?
Makes you think. And speaking of fear, Highlands Fellowship talked about worry being a kind of misplaced faith. You're putting faith in the worst outcome.
Interesting. It's like we're giving power to the negative instead of trusting God.
And worry, it's rampant. People in my congregation are eaten up by it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we use 2 Timothy 17 to help them?
It all circles back to that spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. When we're rooted in those, worry loses its grip.
Okay, switching gears a bit. City Church Garland's sermon, Enduring Faith. That one caught my attention because of how they dove into the Greek word for power.
Right. It's not just any power, it's God's power working through us.
And they presented suffering for the gospel as a privilege, not just some duty.
Powerful reframing. And fitting, given Paul wrote this from prison, reminding Timothy, reminding us, hardship comes with following Jesus.
Exactly. And then to top it off, City Church Garland used the C.S. Lewis quote, "Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point."
Ooh, that's good. How does that hit you in light of 2 Timothy 7:7?
For me, it elevates what spirit of power means. It's not just being bold, it's the strength to live out your faith no matter what.
It's courage to stand firm, speak truth, love, even when it's tough, even when you're afraid.
Yes, courage as the fuel for all the other virtues. And tapping into God's power, that's how we access that courage, even when things are hard.
I love that. It's so encouraging. It's not about being superhuman. It's about tapping into the true source of power.
Which brings us right back to the beginning, fear not, because God has already given us everything we need.
Full circle. So many facets of 2 Timothy 17, but it boils down to this. God's with us. He empowers us. He gives us courage to live out our faith.
Wow, that's a lot to process. I think we've covered a ton of ground in this first part of our deep dive. Let's let this all sink in for a bit, and we'll be back soon to keep exploring the incredible depth of 2 Timothy 17.
You know, it's amazing how much there is to unpack in just this one verse, 2 Timothy 17.
I know, right? And that's why I think this deep dive is so helpful, especially for pastors, Bible study leaders, anyone trying to teach this stuff.
It's like a peek behind the curtain, seeing how other people are approaching this well-known passage, finding fresh angles.
Because we all know, just saying God doesn't give us fear, that's not enough, is it?
Nope. People need more than that. They need practical tools, insights that actually help them deal with fear in their lives.
So let's dig into some more of those tools. One thing that jumped out at me was how many sermons focused on that sound mind part of the verse.
Oh, yeah, that's key. It's not just about conquering fear. It's about cultivating a mind that's, like, grounded at peace.
It's not just willpower.
Yeah.
Right. It's about having that mental and spiritual framework that helps you deal with all the craziness life throws at you.
Exactly. And that takes work. It takes being intentional, relying on the Holy Spirit.
City Church Garland, they had this great analogy about tending a fire pit.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. You got to keep adding fuel protected from the wind, right?
It's like that with our faith, with cultivating a sound mind. It's not automatic. We have to actively nurture it.
Makes you think, what does that tending the fire look like practically?
Yeah, what are the things we can do? The disciplines, the habits that help us stay grounded when everything's going haywire.
Well, for me, prayer is huge. It's connecting with the source of peace. And spending time in the Bible, that's like fuel for the soul.
Community too, right?
Mm,
Having people who encourage you, challenge you, keep you accountable.
definitely. And sometimes it's about carving out space for solitude, silence, to hear God more clearly.
And hey, if you're really struggling, there's no shame in getting professional help. A counselor, a therapist, they can give you tools to deal with anxiety, depression, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Mental and emotional health, just as important as physical health, no question.
And the thing is, it's a journey, right? Cultivating a sound mind, it's not a one-time thing. It's a process.
Always growing, always learning, always surrendering our minds to God's truth.
And, I appreciated how some of these sermons tackled the misconceptions about 2 Timothy 17, like the idea that faith means you never feel fear.
Yeah, several pastors were like, hey, fear is a normal human emotion. It's okay to feel it.
It's about how you respond to it, right?
Right.
And that brings us back to courage, which was another big theme.
And that C.S. Lewis quote, I can't get over it. Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point.
It reframes courage completely, doesn't it?
It's not just about being a daredevil. It's about standing firm in your convictions, even when you're scared.
Because let's be real, ministry is hard, whether you're a pastor or leading a small group.
There's always challenges, tough decisions, conflict. It's easy to get discouraged.
And that's when fear creeps in. You start doubting yourself,
Yeah.
questioning your calling.
But that's where 2 Timothy 17 comes in. We haven't been given a spirit of fear. We've been given power, love, a sound mind.
Those gifts are what give us courage to face the tough stuff.
So as we're thinking about all this, I want to ask our listeners, how are you embodying those gifts in your own life?
Are you leading with courage? Are your decisions based on love? Are you actively cultivating a sound mind?
These are the questions that matter because they affect how we lead, how we teach, how we interact with everyone around us.
Because at the end of the day, people can tell when you're being real, when you're actually living out what you preach.
And that kind of authenticity, it's powerful. It inspires others to step into their God-given power.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Legacy, fear, a sound mind, courage, they're all connected.
Like pieces of a puzzle all fitting together.
And it all points back to the Holy Spirit working in us, changing us, empowering us.
It's not about our own strength. It's about surrendering to God, letting Him lead.
And that's a message we need to hear, especially as pastors, as teachers. It's not about being perfect. It's about the journey.
And with that, I think it's time for another question for our listeners. How does all of this, how does 2 Timothy 17 impact your life and ministry?
It's not just about preaching it. It's about living it.
What does it look like for you to walk in that spirit of power, love, and a sound mind?
Those are some tough questions, but they're worth wrestling with because the answers will affect not just you, but everyone you lead.
Because in the end, the most powerful sermon is the one we live.
Wow, we've really dug deep today. Let's take a moment to absorb all this, and we'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into 2 Timothy 17 and with some final thoughts.
All right, back for the final leg of our 2 Timothy 17 deep dive, ready to wrap this up.
Man, it's amazing how much we uncovered in just one verse.
I know, right? From legacy to fear, Sound mind, courage, it's all woven together.
And I hope our listeners are feeling fired up, ready to take this back to their congregations, their Bible studies.
Absolutely, because it's not just about head knowledge, right? It's about that heart change, that transformation.
You know that C.S. Lewis quote we keep coming back to? Courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point.
That just keeps echoing in my mind.
It's so profound, isn't it? Like it reframes what courage even is.
It's not just about being fearless, it's about living out your faith even when you're afraid.
It's about those everyday acts of courage, choosing love, speaking truth, standing firm.
And let's be real, in ministry, you need that courage. Pastors, teachers, you're facing challenges left and right. Tough decisions, difficult conversations, people hurting. It's easy to get overwhelmed.
And that's when fear tries to take over. You start second-guessing yourself, wondering if you're cut out for this.
But 2 Timothy 17, it cuts right through all that. It reminds us we haven't been given a spirit of fear.
We've got power, love, a sound mind. Those are our weapons.
And those are what equip us to face those challenges head on.
So as we're wrapping this up, I want to challenge our listeners. Take a good look in the mirror. How are you embodying those gifts?
Are you leading with courage? Are your decisions rooted in love? Are you actively cultivating that sound mind, that peace that passes understanding?
Because these aren't just nice ideas. They have a direct impact on how you lead, how you teach, how you interact with everyone.
People can spot a fake a mile away, but when you're genuinely living out 2 Timothy 1:7, that authenticity shines through.
And it inspires others to do the same, to tap into their own God-given power.
So here's our final takeaway for you, and it's simple. Don't just preach 2 Timothy 1:7, live it.
Let it change you from the inside out. Let it affect your decisions, your relationships, your ministry.
And watch what happens. God will use you in ways you can't even imagine. He'll spark courage and faith in the people around you.
Well, that about wraps it up for our 2 Timothy 7:7 deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We hope this has been helpful, encouraging, maybe even a little challenging.
And until next time, may you be filled with that spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. Go out there and make a difference.